fight on the front lines. I can stop the enemy's advance with grace.
Do you have Lady Edelgard's permission to... I suppose I've no choice but to provide cover.
Thank you, Hubert. We are off to a terrible start.
What's up, everybody? Dev here. Welcome back to our character discussion series. If you haven't seen our other video where we discuss Edelgard, go ahead and give it a watch. In this next video, we'll be discussing Hubert and Ferdinand. So let's go ahead and dive in. Next we have Hubert von Vestra.
Yay! I really like Hubert. Like, in terms of personality, right? People can probably just chalk it up to Edelgard's right-hand man.
Yeah.
It's very easy to.
Especially if you don't play Black Eagles, because he doesn't support with any non-Black Eagles characters, at least students, right?
You can't even recruit him.
You can't even recruit him, right? So unless you're playing the Black Eagles route, you're not gonna learn shit about him.
No.
Like, you're definitely just gonna see him as her right-hand man. Because he fits into the archetype that exists in pretty much every Fire Emblem game, where he's like the Dark Mage right-hand man to, like, the Emperor, right?
Yeah.
But I love that, like, in this case, the Dark Mage right-hand man, who's usually some kind of, minor villain, right? Like Iago from Fates, for example. But in this case, he can be your friend, right? And he's actually really cool.
You are my friend. But yeah, he is definitely, because I remember when I would talk to him, he would just say, like, are you gonna get in the way of Edelgard? Like, get out of here or something. I'm like, you don't have to be so mean about it, Hubert. I just wanted to talk to you.
Yeah, like, he's very, in a way, he's very single-minded, right? Where it's like, his one goal is to help Edelgard, right? Whatever it is, whatever she needs him to do, whatever she needs to get done, he'll do it and he'll help her. If anyone gets in her way, if anyone threatens her goals, he's not above threatening them, and, in a lot of cases, even using violence to get rid of them.
Yeah. And he also serves as her advisor too, I believe.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah. And, I don't know, I think for a lot of people where if they judge him based on just him more or less not hanging by the thread, but, like, he's always at Edelgard's beck and call.
Yeah.
And if that's what they define him as, just that, I don't think it's fair, because, like you said, right, if you don't play the Black Eagles route, you're not going to really know anything about him.
Yeah.
Like, I haven't gone through enough supports. I was intending on making him, be paired with Byleth in my route, but I didn't finish it, obviously. Because I did have interest in him anyways, because I do think it takes a certain person, too, because knowing what Edelgard's main goal is, you kind of have to really believe in it in order to follow her to this extent, right?
Oh, yeah.
Because, like we said before, you're going to go to hell and back.
Yeah.
So, and you kind of have to be prepared to go along with her in this regard.
It's a very bloody path, and it's not going to be easy.
Yeah. So, for him to take that approach, it means that he really believes in her cause. And to that extent, right, we could say that he's also somewhat of a good person, because he probably also believes that the crest system is more or less a corrupt system overall.
Yeah.
Where it's very flawed in terms of it shouldn't be determining one's value in life. And sure,
yeah, he never voices that, but that is an assumption you can make, right?
Yeah, I mean, if people just want to assume, no, it's only because it's Edelgard's. Like, if Edelgard believed in, let's get everyone to fully invest into this,
he still would,
but system. Like, he still would do it. But I think, at the very least, I want to believe that he's against it, at least on a more personal level.
Yeah.
Again, it could just be because he's super faithful towards Edelgard.
Because it is important to keep in mind, right, is that his house, the House of Vestra, right?
Yeah.
They are more or less the right-hand man and the shadow of the Emperor, right?
Yeah.
And it's a long-standing tradition, like over 1,000 years, where it's like they are pretty much the shadow, the blade, the right-hand man of the Emperor. And so he was actually, he swore his loyalty to Edelgard when he was only 6, right? And he, like, officially became her vassal.
Yeah.
Probably her first, like, official vassal, right?
Yeah.
So he is loyal to the end, and this is his role, right? This is a role he accepted, and he is... he's very honorable, right? Where it's like, this is his role, and he's going to do it no matter what, right? He will listen to Edelgard's every single word, because that's what he's supposed to do.
Yeah, I think some people might see that as a little sad, though, where it's like, you're only living for another person, you're not living for yourself. But I feel like he, not necessarily joy, he gets fulfillment out of that, I guess.
Like, he's clearly not suffering by doing this. Like, he's very clearly, at the very least, satisfied with his position.
Like, if he was ever feeling otherwise, I mean, he didn't make it apparent.
Yeah.
Which probably wouldn't have been a very easy thing to do anyways, considering his upbringing. So.
Yeah. And then another thing that I do like about him, right, is that we mentioned it before, right? He's actually a good person deep inside, but I just think it's so entertaining where it's like he appears so outwardly like creepy and sinister and threatening to other people, right?
Yeah.
There's that Bernadetta support we really like, where he just, for like seemingly no reason, just is doing creepy laughs around her because he thinks it's funny, but he also thinks it'll help her just kind of not be so scared of stuff.
You can't quit talking and laughing just to try to make me feel better? That's not really fair. I need to master my own fear.
Is that right?
Yes. Right. Why?
You told me not to forego laughing, so I laughed as hard as I could.
And I always thought that was hilarious. Granted, he is kind of bullying her in a way.
I think he is more of a troll at that point.
Yeah, he's kind of a troll. Like, he wasn't doing it maliciously, right? But he was clearly having fun.
Yeah. Like, he was taking some delight in her distress, let's be honest.
Yeah. And, one thing I really, really like about Hubert is his dedication. And by that specifically, I mean regarding the circumstances about his father, right? Because in the insurrection of the Seven, all 7 noble houses of the Empire contributed to taking away the Emperor's power, right?
Yeah.
Essentially betraying him.
Yeah.
And so because of this, Hubert hates his father. He has like a deep hatred for his father, because in his eyes, his father betrayed the Emperor. He betrayed his one role in life,
his family lineage.
Yeah, and he completely dishonored House Vestra, right? Like, Hubert says that he has dishonored the 1,000 plus years of service that our house has done for the Emperor, right?
I was good friends with your father, you know. Perhaps this is fate, eh? Of course, when I left the Empire, I broke off my friendship with him. And, well, everyone else.
You were right to sever ties with such a miserable piece of filth.
Sharp words, Hubert. Contemptible though your father may be, he is still your father.
Don't overcomplicate it. I will not forgive him. Ever. Contemptible is just the right word for the wretch. Do you truly know what kind of man my father is?
I assume you're talking about the insurrection of the Seven. At the time, I was already at Garrick Mach. I know nothing more than hearsay. That said, I found it hard to believe that Lord Vestra would challenge the Emperor like that.
Yet that's exactly what he did. Since the dawn of the Adrestian Empire, House Vestra has served House Hresvelg as the Emperor's right hand. My father spat on a legacy of loyalty and devotion that had lasted 1,100 years. He conspired with the ministers to usurp power from the Emperor and Lady Edelgard.
And something that, says a lot about his character is that in part 2, right, after the war starts, Edelgard kind of routs all the nobles that are not faithful to her, right?
Yeah.
Those nobles, including Ferdinand's father as well as Hubert's father. And it's actually stated that Hubert is the one that had his own father assassinated.
Yeah, I think I remember seeing that somewhere.
Yeah, which that says a lot about his character, right? Where it's like, he is so loyal and committed and, honor bound to his oath that he is willing to have his own father, who he deems a traitor, be assassinated. And he has no regrets, right? He says his father deserved it.
Yeah,
right?
And I think to a degree, right, where he holds a lot of pride in just his own family.
Oh yeah,
lineage, right?
he does. Yeah.
So I'm sure a lot of that also stems from there too, where it's like bringing shame onto the family. It's not like just shame to him as the son of, the person who more or less betrayed the Emperor.
Yeah.
It's that because of this, it's that one stain on their otherwise impeccable, like, record, right? Where it's like, he doesn't want to be part of that stain. Like, he pretty much wants to not necessarily erase it, because erasing it would mean more or less trying to cover up that it ever even happened.
Yeah.
I think he just kind of wants to do it where it's like, this is where I'm cutting off that stain.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not trying to erase it, but I'm very much like, it's not going to happen again.
Yeah, kind of like take ownership of it and restore the honor that his father kind of lost, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, and, I always thought that was a really interesting point of his character, that, some people may miss just because, it's very easy to just see him as this, like, kind of just single-minded Edelgard's right-hand man.
Every time you open your mouth, it's Lady Edelgard this or Lady Edelgard that. Do you ever think for yourself?
Right, but it's like he holds his own values, right?
Yeah.
Like we just mentioned about his father, and there's also quite a few parts throughout the game where he doesn't necessarily 100% agree with everything Edelgard says or wants to do.
No.
But he does it anyways, right? He doesn't voice his concerns or disagreements.
I mean, he'll do it like you said before, like when lying about the missiles, but it'll be like he'll advise her.
Yeah, he'll advise her, right? He won't tell her that, she should do something else, think about doing something different. He'll, as long as it benefits her, he'll do it, even if he doesn't 100% agree.
Show them this letter. Threaten them. Do what you must. Now go.
Yes, sir. Hubert, that letter. Is that what I think it was?
I suppose there's no denying it.
But Edelgard...
explicitly forbade me to send it. Yes, I know.
I cannot believe it! You disobeyed a direct order? I thought you were her loyal aide.
Unwaveringly. All that I do for her. I seem to recall you expressing a similar sentiment. It is our role to guide her when she is on the wrong course of action. Is that not what you said?
You were not supposed to do it in secret. When you disagree with your leader, you must voice your concerns directly. Otherwise, what is the point?
The point is the same. Lady Edelgard's best interests are served whether she knows it or not. She needs not trouble herself with the mundane details of my actions. Only results matter.
And that does put him at odds with the next character that we're going to talk about, being Ferdinand, where Ferdinand's very much the opposite, where Ferdinand also feels a kind of responsibility to help Edelgard, but he thinks that, he has the opposite of Hubert, where if he disagrees with her, he sees that as his responsibility to voice his concerns, right, and have Edelgard maybe rethink some things, and that puts him at odds with Hubert, but I've always liked their relationship, Hubert and Ferdinand, because it's kind of two sides of the same coin, right? Where it's like, at the end of the day, they're both committed to their houses, they're both committed to Edelgard and helping her, but they have different outlooks in terms of, like, approaches, right? Whereas Hubert is blind obedience, Ferdinand is more like...
I wouldn't call it blind obedience.
Some may call it that. That's why I'm calling it that. Where it's like he will literally do whatever she says. It doesn't matter what it is. Whereas Ferdinand is more like constructive criticism, where he wants to help, but if there's something he doesn't think is right or that he doesn't agree with, he'll voice his concerns. And, it caused a lot of friction between Hubert and Ferdinand, but, at the end of the day, especially once you complete their supports...
I think they, at the very least, I didn't complete them, right?
Yeah.
I'm just going to assume they still respect each other
in
terms of, you're doing what you believe in, and at the end of the day, that's a lot more than what people can do.
Yeah, they have a lot of respect for each other at the end of the day, because even though they may have a different approach,
they're at odds,
they both want to help Edelgard, and they both care about the future of the Empire.
Lady Edelgard surpasses you in nearly every respect. But I think when it comes to positivity, you may actually exceed her.
Excuse me?
In a way, it is merely a mask for your tactlessness. But even so, your relentless optimism, well, suffice it to say that it is your best quality.
What?
You are constantly striving to grow as a person, to seek new knowledge, to push new limits. When others might get distracted or abandon their path, you never yield. In that aspect, at least, I think you are unmatched.
Hubert, are you alright? Do you have a cold? Or the plague? Am I hearing a deathbed confession?
It was only a compliment. There's no need for such dramatic exaggeration.
Dramatic, you say?
He's a very complex character in some ways. In some ways, he's very simple, right? But I think he's very interesting. And like you mentioned, he's a character that you really enjoy.
I mean, I'm pretty simple too in regards of I saw his time skip version, I was like, okay, he's the one. And then that was it.
With his emo hair?
I mean, I wouldn't call it, yeah, it's a little emo. I like it better because his Academy one, he looks like an old man trying to dress as an Academy student for some reason.
He does, because he is older than everyone. I
He
believe he's 20 in part 1.
Hello, Phil.
Yeah.
Just put like a skater like helmet, like hat on him.
In the skateboard, yeah.
Yeah, a skateboard. But yeah, like his time skip version, it suits him.
Oh yeah.
He looks so good like that.
Yeah, he looks like a very handsome vampire.
I will say nothing to that.
So now we have Ferdinand von Aegir.
I am Ferdinand von Aegir.
He's another one of my favorite characters.
Mine too.
Like, I think that he's the kind of character where at first, maybe he doesn't seem too interesting because he's very much, at least on the surface, your standard noble, right? Where it's like he's proud of being noble, and he takes his duty seriously. But there's a lot to him. There's a lot more underneath the surface.
A lot more depth.
There's a lot of depth to him. And I think that his interactions with characters are some of the best. Like, his supports are by far some of my favorites. Especially, like, his support with Dorothea. We mentioned his support with Hubert. You know, and just in general, like, you know, I like his support with Lawrence as well. I think that he has a lot of interesting things to say. Mostly because of his position and his outlook kind of on his responsibilities as a noble and what he needs to be doing to help the Empire, right? Like, I think that he has a very interesting perspective that's very pertinent to, like, the overall main story, or at very least the themes of the Black Eagles route. Arguably the themes of the game in general, right? Where it's like, you know, about, you know, certain responsibilities that your birth, you know, assigns you. Because, you know, House Aegir, something that's very notable about House Aegir is that this is the house that the Prime Minister comes from, and so the head of House Aegir is always the Prime Minister of the Empire, which currently is his father, and being the first legitimate son of House Aegir, as he likes to introduce himself. He is the next in line to be Prime Minister, right? And since the next one in line for Emperor is Edelgard, he knows that his role in life is to be Edelgard's Prime Minister.
So I guess in a way he'd be also Edelgard's advisor.
Yeah, for sure. He would be one of her top advisors. And he takes his responsibility very, very seriously, where he sees it as his role to help guide Edelgard to be the best emperor that she can be.
Lady Edelgard is the Imperial Princess. You are merely the Prime Minister's son.
Yes, I understand that. But my duty is to guide her, to give frank advice when she is on the wrong course of action. That is what I strive to do, always. Thus my devotion to surpass Edelgard, so that if she needs guidance, I will be prepared to give it. If you think it is tiresome to have a mind of your own, you will never be much of an advisor.
And like we mentioned before during Hubert's section, that also means that if there's something that he disagrees with or something that he thinks needs to be changed, he will voice his concerns because he doesn't think that just blindly following Edelgard's orders is the correct thing to do. He thinks that, you know, if she needs guidance, then he is the one that will guide her, right?
Yeah. And I think kind of like a word to describe it, right? Where it's like chivalry, I guess.
Yeah.
Is kind of the number one that comes to mind.
Yeah.
When talking about him. Just because for him, right, just his overall personality, I know we talked about it before, but he's very proud to be a noble.
Yeah.
But he also sees it as, like, kind of what you said, a duty, right? A responsibility as a noble. And kind of touching on the Dorothea one, the Dory one, where it's like, she doesn't have a very positive outlook on nobles.
Yeah.
Whereas for him, it's not that he thinks commoners are below him, but he does more or less kind of imply that they need protection. They as nobles need to protect the common folk.
Yeah.
Because they took a responsibility of being in this high position of power and authority to make decisions that benefit them. Because at the end of the day, you can't have a kingdom without citizens, right? You can't have an empire without the people to live in it.
Yeah, like, you can't be the king of nothing, right?
Pretty much, right? And so I think for him, he takes a lot more, I guess he takes a more compassionate approach to things.
Yeah, for sure.
And, it's not that Edelgard, again, we talked about where it's not that she lacks compassion, but I think for room of either compassion or logic, she can't help but just lean towards logic, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because compassion would probably mean more lives are lost in the long run. But at the same time, too, I think Ferdinand is not too unrealistic about it, or he's not like saying, have every life spared or anything like that, because I think even he himself knows that's impossible.
Yeah, like, he's not a pacifist or anything.
No, and at that, for that point, right, where he's not all for war either.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm pretty sure if he could avoid it, he would like to avoid having war.
Yeah.
But at the same time, too, I think he would be the one to encourage her to go through all the options. If her initial option involves war or just going into battle, because, again, right, his pride as a noble, and he doesn't just want to trample over the common folk.
No, quite the contrary.
Yeah, he wants the opposite. He wants to protect them.
Yeah, and, like, he does mention at some point that he thinks that nobles need to see things from the point of view of the common folk, which is very rare in nobles. Like, it's kind of shocking that he would say that, right, being who he is.
I think he even is familiar with, like, teas that they use for common folk, like, because, there's different teas that they can acquire as nobles, right? I think he's somewhat familiar, or at least he's open to trying them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's a very stark contrast to Lawrence, at least, and I do like their support, just because you can see the contrast of two people who are very, very proud to be nobles, but they have not totally different, but I would say different enough outlooks on their position as nobles, at least concerning common folk, right?
Yeah.
Just everyday citizens.
For someone of status to make such a scene, what a disgrace.
I thought just the same. A noble ought to hold himself to a higher standard. It is hardly appropriate to drink and mingle with a tavern full of commoners.
Oh, that is not quite what I meant. I do not object to a noble patronizing their local establishments. In fact, I would say such excursions have value.
Is that so? I would be very curious to hear what value you mean exactly. But allow me first to venture a guess. Is it that you suppose it is proper for a noble to bolster a town's wealth with his patronage? If that is your thinking, then I would counter that whatever one adds to a merchant's coffers seldom makes it to the pockets of the townsfolk. I think that if a noble wishes to use his resources to ease the burdens of the commoners, he ought to go about town and spend it more directly.
That is wonderfully insightful, Lawrence. Albeit not what I had in mind. What I meant was this. We can benefit from crossing the threshold and learning more about regular folk. We scarcely understand the reality of their lives. In turn, they do not know about us. I have heard that some believe we have horns growing from our heads. It is an embarrassing and potentially perilous state of affairs.
You are quite right.
And I think I really appreciate Ferdinand being that way, because I think he's the type of noble that is more typical of Fire Emblem, the lords, I guess.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, if he had blue hair, I'd be like, oh, this is the Marth of this game, right? Like, maybe not to that degree, but it's definitely within the same realm, I think. Closer
he has like a very Fire Emblem lord personality.
Like,
right?
he's closer to the typical lord style in terms of personality than Edelgard is, I would say.
Yeah, I would agree. Something else that I like about him, right, is that it's especially apparent in his support with Edelgard is that he's very, very competitive, where he strives to be as best as he possibly can because he thinks that's the only way that he'll be able to properly guide Edelgard, right? He needs to be the best person he can be, he needs to be as strong as he can be, but this also leads him to be competitive with both himself and with other people, especially with Edelgard.
Why don't we do what our ancestors did and have a little duel ourselves?
That's what you were going to say. But the answer is no.
You interrupted me!
Standing tall, I see.
Edelgard, hello. What do you think of this horse? An equine marvel, no? Look how intelligent he is. You can see it in his face. Certainly much smarter than your horse.
Oh, what a lovely bloom.
Behold, Edelgard. Do you see this blood-red bloom? This is much more impressive than the pale little sprigs you have there. And, as I'm sure you know, redness symbolizes courage and strength.
Ferdinand, stop.
Because at least early on, he kind of holds the view that he needs to surpass her in order to be able to properly guide her, right?
Well, that, and also because I think the mentality of, is someone going to listen to you if you yourself are not good in the area that you're trying to advise for?
Yeah.
You know, it's like trying to get advice from someone, you know, about how to swim, tips from someone, but they've never swam in their life, right? It's like you kind of, or it's like they can only just stay in the shallow end, like they can't really swim.
Yeah.
You know, but so until they get to a point where it's like maybe they can do, you know, freestyle swimming, like they can swim for meters, and then all of a sudden, okay, then your advice is a lot more, I'm more receptive to getting advice from you. He could be, I think he's probably doing it from that perspective, right, where it's like, why would she listen to someone who's not necessarily beneath her, but less skilled, right?
Yeah.
Because at that point, then you can't really argue like, I would know better to the same degree as you would otherwise if you were actually excelling in that area.
Yeah. So it could be because of that he holds such a competitive attitude towards her, of wanting to be as good, if not better. But throughout their supports, you know, his and Edelgard's, he does kind of come to the acceptance that Edelgard is just stronger than him, because they actually do spar, and she completely kicks his ass.
I've had enough of your foolish antics. Very well. I will grant you the duel you so desperately desire. But when I win, you must forfeit the right to bother me with your ridiculousness. Forever. Do we have a deal?
Ah, so you'll fight me after all? Wonderful. To battle, then! All right, Edelgard. Have at me!
As you wish. Ha!
It only took you one blow? How?
And he just comes to accept that, like, he probably can never surpass Edelgard, but he doesn't take that as, like, a negative. Instead, he kind of just accepts that, like, his role is to be at her side and help her in any way that he can.
If you insist upon undoing the nobility, then we must build something in its place. We can provide free education for all, and then select the highest performing students for more intensive training and tutoring. I truly believe that people are products of their environment.
Finding a way to educate the people. Interesting. I'm impressed by how much thought you've given this. No matter what shape the world takes, I'm sure I'll always need people like you by my side. People with strong principles who will argue with me and force me to consider ideas that are contrary to my own.
And so I feel like he's definitely one of the characters that exhibits the most development in terms of, like, he definitely does change his outlook on stuff pretty frequently, right? And he changes it based on experience and things that he learns, which I really appreciate, that he actually does have a lot of character development.
Do you think maybe that's why he grew his hair to be Edelgard and longest hair?
Maybe to beat her in hair
I can't beat you in
length.
sparring, I can beat you in hair length.
Yeah, maybe. That could be a reason.
Because does he ever give a reason for why he grew out his hair? Like, I love it, but I just don't know why.
I mean, does he need a reason? He looks great.
He does look
Like,
great.
I love his long hair.
I do too. But it's like, I don't know. I feel like when someone is capable of having hair that long, why didn't they have hair that long to begin with? Because it's like, it's not that he's like 5 years old or anything. He barely grew out his hair. Like, he's in his late teens or something.
Well, I mean, it's like me. Like I have long hair now, but in high school, I always kept it a bit shorter. And suddenly, at some point, I was just like, I'll just grow it out. Maybe he had the same kind of revelation.
Revelation? Is that what we're calling it?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I do agree. Long hair on men is the best. I'm not biased.
Not at all. And so, another thing I do like about him is a lot like Hubert, he holds a very strong sense of personal morals. So, because his father was one of the key figures in their insurrection, he actually doesn't have a very high opinion of his father. Like, he doesn't agree with what he did, and he dislikes that he more or less betrayed the Emperor.
Yeah.
But he's a lot more compassionate than Hubert.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't hate his father.
He doesn't have his father assassinated.
No, he doesn't have a super high opinion of him, but he still is willing to acknowledge that his father is doing what's best for the Empire, right? That his father, like, whether or not he agrees with what he did, his father is trying to help the Empire. Whether or not that's true, that's at least how Ferdinand sees it, right? Like, he's trying to find a reason to not hate his father. And when his father does die during the paralogue that he shares with Lysithea, he actually does mourn his death, right? He doesn't think that he deserved to be ousted from his house like Edelgard ousted him. He doesn't think that he deserved to be killed, especially in the way that he was killed, right, by some random bandits, right, or thieves, like just by some nobodies, right, just like just unceremoniously, why can't I say this word? Unceremoniously just murdered, right? Like, he doesn't think he deserved that, which, even though, you know, he has a similar sense of morals to Hubert in that regard, he's a lot more compassionate. Like, he is a very compassionate person. He's very kind. And, you know, overall, he's just a great guy. Like, I really, really like Ferdinand. He's easily one of my favorite characters from Three Houses.
Like, I think maybe if people who have already played, like, other titles of Fire Emblem, if they think he's boring, I think it's just a matter of they've seen a lot of noble characters so far, if they played other entries, right? That it might have been, like, too repetitive. But even for me, it's like, granted, I haven't personally played through a lot of other ones. Like, I played through, like, 2-3 other Fire Emblem games, but I've seen you play some, and I've seen other people do, you know, like, gameplay of it. And, but it's like, I can see why some people would see that overlap and be like, he's not remarkable or anything. Or it's like, I will agree, like, he's not gonna be the one to stand out to you, in the grand scheme of things. But I think for me, he does stand out in terms of the fact that he's not just one-dimensional noble, right? Like, he's noble, or something like that.
Yeah, like, he's a complex character, and he does have growth.
He does, and you can see, you know, like, the whole thing about mourning over his father, right? You know, it's a stark contrast to Hubert. So, you know, there are differences, and then the fact that I think the best part is that we get to see how he interacts with others. Because, again, you're going to be somewhat different depending on who you're talking to, who you're interacting with.
Yeah, for sure.
And, you know, you can see someone's personality based off, like, a biography. That's just their profile, right? They're going to, maybe not them, but if someone is doing, like, a profile thing for every single character, they'll list his personality traits. But then it's like, you have to consider, like, maybe he's actually, like, goofy with certain characters. Maybe he's more serious with other characters, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's not that he's just this one-dimensional character with every single person. So I think that's an important note as well. And I think that's the best part about Three Houses, is that there's so many different personality types, and then we get to see how they interact with each other.
Yeah.
So I think that gives Ferdinand a lot more depth in that regard. Like, it gives him more room for, not improvement per se, but just more room for people to see other traits of him that otherwise he wouldn't have been able to.
Oh yeah, for sure. And then something that people who may not have seen the supports will not know about, I just found this really interesting, and I just always remembered it, is so we talked about his support with Dorothea, right? Where it's like, he actually kind of somewhat met her as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that she describes their encounter, right, is that, like, this is back when she was an orphan. We'll get more into Dorothea during her slide, but she was, I believe, bathing herself in, like, a fountain. And then she was singing, right?
Yeah.
Ferdinand hears it, and then he, like, walks in, and then he just kind of is, what would you say? He's kind of taken aback, right? He's kind of speechless, because, in his words, he thought that she was like a water fairy or like, you know, a water nymph. Like, yeah. And he just didn't know what to say, and he just like ran away, right? And Dorothea took that as an insult, right?
You think I would ever treat people differently based on appearances? There is nothing noble about that.
Oh, really? You're something different? That's not how I remember things. It was the very day that I was discovered. I was in high spirits. Nothing was wrong in the world. I secretly bathed in one of the town's fountains, hoping to wash off some of the dirt from the streets. I sang the same song the opera composer overheard earlier that day. And that's when you appeared.
Me? No, it could not have been.
Don't play dumb. You glared at me, the same look I'd gotten from every other noble, then you ran off. When we met at the academy, you were a different person. All smiles and friendly words. You were like a bee, Ferdinand. A bee attracted to a flower in full bloom.
So it was you then, singing that song. Dorothea, please listen. This is a misunderstanding. When I saw you, I could not take my eyes off you. I was hypnotized. Your beautiful voice, your elegant face, droplets of water on your skin that glittered in the sun. I thought you were a water nymph.
Stop it, don't lie to me.
No, it is true. I was only a child. The vision overwhelmed me. That is why I ran. I plucked up the courage to return, but no one was there. I thought perhaps it was a dream.
I really like their relationship. I think that, you know...
There was miscommunication.
Yeah. And I think it's kind of funny.
Yeah.
And I also like their interactions as adults, because, you know, at first he doesn't remember that it's her, but she remembers that it's him. And then so she holds, like, a prejudice against him, and he doesn't understand why she doesn't like him.
Why she's immediately, like, on guard against him.
Yeah.
It's like, whoa, what did I do to you?
And then, you know, there's that line that Dorothea says, like, you're a bee, right? And then he's like, what are you talking about? Right? And then she explains that, like, you know, he's a bee, he's just going to every, like, pretty flower, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, overall, I just think they have such, like, a great kind of back and forth. I think that their history with each other and the way they interact, you know, once they're grown up at the academy, it's very fun to witness. And at least for me, they're probably, like, my favorite pair. You know, I'm not super into shipping characters, but Ferdinand and Dorothea is one that I always really did like. I think that they go really well together.
Well, because the game accounts for, like, different combination types, and
yeah.
I think because of that, you're gonna find some way for them to be like, or for you to go, oh, they make a pretty good match together. It's because I think the game accounts for that.
Yeah.
Granted, it still is based on the individual characters. Like, I'm sure there's some where you can be like, yeah, they're probably not for each other.
Yeah.
So, because of that, it's like, I agree. Like, I really do like his support with Dorothea. Like, I think they do make a pretty good pairing. At least, even if you want to go romantically, I feel like they do have really good chemistry. And you can have chemistry as friendship too, right?
Yeah.
So, either way you go about it, I do think that they mesh well together, especially once they resolve the misunderstanding, right? They're a lot more friendly after that, so...
Oh yeah, for sure, because something that I believe you will only see this if you are not playing Black Eagles and you don't recruit Ferdinand, but you did recruit Dorothea, so it's very specific circumstances. But if you don't recruit Ferdinand, right?
Yeah.
He shows up as part of Edelgard's army.
Yeah, I remember. Like, it was in... I think it was surrounded by water or something, like this castle thing.
Yeah, it was, yeah.
Like a fortress, I think. Can't remember.
Yeah, it was.
I just remember seeing him in his luscious locks. I'm like, Ferdinand?
Yeah. And then, you know, after the battle, right, which he will die in if you don't recruit him, because you have to fight against him, right, and there's no way to spare him. In the chapter following that battle, if you talk to Dorothea in the monastery, she'll actually be crying, and she's very, very clearly upset and just absolutely devastated that you guys had to kill Ferdinand, right? Like she'll say like, "We killed Ferdy," and she's just kind of, you know, she's very clearly just emotionally distressed. And you know, I thought that was really sad. I never saw that myself. I looked it up.
Well, that's because why would you kill him?
Why
you
would
monster.
why would I not recruit Ferdinand?
Yeah.
Yeah, but you know, that's just a very like heartbreaking line where it's like clearly she cared about him. And then, you know, the other thing I was gonna bring up, something that, you know, is based on his relationships, his supports that people may not have seen, is so in his support with Bernadetta, right?
Oh.
So he actually does mention that when he was a kid, that his parents actually were setting him up with a noblewoman, but he refused to go through with it because he heard that she would make voodoo dolls and would never come out of her room.
Oh no.
And so it was actually Bernadetta that his parents were trying to set him up with in an arranged marriage as a kid. So I just always thought that it was hilarious that it's like they were potentially going to be paired up, but he got scared of her because of the rumors that, you know, she's very reclusive and makes voodoo dolls and stuff. Which I always thought that was pretty funny.
I think I remember that, yeah. Because at the very least, I tried to, even if I'm not going to pair them up in the end, I still like to get as far as I can in their supports with other characters.
Yeah, me too.
It's interesting.
Yeah, like I always try to like max out their support list. Like I want to see everybody's supports with each other. At least as much as possible.
Yeah.
What's up, everybody? Thank you for making it to the end of the video. If you enjoyed it, be sure to subscribe to the channel and leave the video a like. Your support means so much, and it motivates me to keep making these. Stay tuned for our next video where we'll discuss Linhardt and Caspar. Also, we just wanted to say a few words about Billy Kametz, so if you'd like to hear them, stick around till the end. Once again, thank you so much, everyone. Take care, and we'll see you next time.
I just want to say this really quick. Like, you can cut this out if you want to, but for those who have watched, or not watched, maybe watched and also played the game in English, and you're familiar with the voice actors, you may have heard about Ferdinand's voice actor in particular.
Billy Kametz.
Yeah. At the time of when we were recording this, we learned pretty recently that he had actually passed away.
Yeah.
And we just want to express that he is a big reason why we also love the character. I know we didn't really go into voices in this video.
We were mostly trying to stick to just the
character themselves,
written aspects of the characters. But you know, it is something I wanted to touch upon here as well. Like at the very end, just the voice cast for this game is so good. And you know, Ferdinand in particular is one character where I feel his voice actor Billy Kametz, you know, Billy did so much for making Ferdinand such a lovable character.
Like, he did Ferdinand justice. Like,
he did.
There's a reason why I am Ferdinand von Aegir is such a big meme, because if it was just anyone, I feel like it wouldn't have had that much of an impact.
But the delivery on that is just so iconic.
Oh yeah, like, you can't, at least if you played in English, right, you can't see Ferdinand and not hear that. You cannot, you know, that every time you see Ferdinand, it's like Ferdinand von Aegir. Like, you can't just say his first name in your head, right? And I think because of that, where the appreciation for him, and I just really do feel like it's such a loss. And I didn't want to put that while we were talking about him, because again, we try to focus on the character themselves. But I feel like because we both played in English, and it was one of the few times, since I'm a giant weeb, I usually prefer to play games and watch a lot of anime in Japanese. But this was one particular game where I was like, I really love the English cast. And it's not just Billy for sure, but other characters too I really loved.
Yeah, like in particular, right, aside from Billy, I really loved Hubert's voice actor, Robbie Damon. He's one of my favorites. You know, Petra's voice actors did such a great job. Edelgard's voice actress, Tara Platt, she's one of my longtime favorites. I've been a huge fan of Tara Platt's work for such a long time now.
Mm-hmm.
Overall, I think they just got amazing voice actors for this game, and they definitely play a big role in why we love the character so much. Like the writing is, the biggest contributor for sure, but the voice acting plays a pivotal role in.
It gives them more life.
It gives them more life, and it really sells the character.
It really does, and I think because of that, where just being able to talk about Ferdinand as a character, right? It just feels kind of bittersweet, where it's like I have so many fond memories of him. Where it's like, again, like he would always be a character that I would always try to recruit in my other routes, where I'd be in Blue Lions and Golden Deer, and I would talk with him. And it'd be like so interesting because I'm like, you're an amazing character, and not just that. Like every time you talk, I feel like everything is meaningful in every single line that he says. And that just pulls me more into the narrative every time. Like when he's talking with Lawrence, like again, to bring it up, where that was my favorite kind of support with him. Because again, you have very similar stance on they're proud to be nobles, but the way he delivers it, where like you can definitely make different voices, where it's like you can be conceited and be like, I'm a noble. Right? But for him, it's just, I'm a noble. He says it so matter-of-factly and just...
He's so sincere.
He's so sincere about it. And, again, like, I do feel like he is gonna be the voice for me when it comes to Ferdinand. But, yeah, like, I can't really see another voice actor for him.
Me neither. Like, he was the perfect cast for the role. And since we're talking about Billy, this is kind of what started this little discussion about the voice actors. Another role that we absolutely loved him in was Dr. Maruki from Persona 5 Royal. Like that.
Kind of going off topic, and also spoilers.
Yeah. So big spoilers for Persona 5 Royal. Pretty much all I've got to say, really, is that. Because I don't want to spoil too much. I do want anyone that has not played it to play it. It's so good. But Dr. Maruki is the best character in the game. He is absolutely amazing.
I don't care if you already played Persona 5. Play Royal.
Play Royal. Even if you played 5. I played 5 original, so did you.
Too.
But we went through all of Royal, and then the extra content that Royal adds...
It's pretty much another game.
It's so good. And Dr. Maruki was really the thing that drove it home. He's amazing, and Billy's voice work as Dr. Maruki, I think it was pivotal, right? Like,
oh yeah,
because Dr. Maruki is such a compassionate character, like and the thing is, it's Billy's voice acting that really made him so compelling.
Oh yeah, because you can see, they look a certain way because of character design. They're written a certain way, so the dialogue is all set.
Yeah.
But until you get that voice mixed in, then again, like what I said before, it brings life to the character.
Yeah.
Like you make it feel like this character is really there. Like it almost made me think it was like, I don't know, it was playing with my mind so much. I'm like, who is this person that I feel like I know in real life now? Where it's like, it just feels so lifelike, I guess.
Yeah.
Is the best way to put it. Like again, when you said before, where a lot of his voice delivery is like so sincere. And you get that same style, like, I think because of that too, because we played it straight after, like, not straight after, but after Three Houses.
Yeah.
So we had already gotten familiar with Ferdinand's voice at that point, but it was a little bit before we got into Royal, and at first we were like, his voice sounds familiar, and then we were able to confirm it was Billy, and then we just started calling him Dr. Von Eyre.
Yeah, we just call him Dr. Von Eyre for the whole game.
Yeah, so... I think that's what made us have a little bit more attachment to Ferdinand as well, just to kind of tie it back, in Three Houses. Where it's like calling him Dr. Von Eyre, because that's when we first heard Billy really in such a big role. And I don't know, that made me have more of a fondness towards him as well. So, yeah, that's, I think, kind of a way for us to pay our respects is just to mention what our favorite moments were with him as a voice actor. I can't say much for his role in anime because I'm a weeb